The Iowa Hawkeyes' goals and reasonable aspirations have completely changed for the 2024 Iowa football season. Of course, the loss at Michigan State really does them in as far as the conference race and the playoff race is concerned. A 9-3 Iowa team is unlikely to even sniff the playoff, let alone Indy. And I do think it's going to be easier moving forward to make it to the 12-team playoff than it is to make the top two in the conference. But regardless, the Hawkeyes return home for homecoming against Northwestern. What are the key stats to follow, and what should we expect to see against a Wildcats team that once again looks on paper to be very similar from an offensive standpoint to Michigan State? The one big difference probably being athleticism at key skill position spots. We'll talk about it in just a second. But first, of course, want to thank our sponsor, Iowa Floor Covering. Their Tough Core Click Together 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring. I was just telling a friend about this awesome stuff last night. If you need a DIY product for your project, give this Tough Core Flooring a chance. Give them a call. Give Tyler, Ryan, and Brian a call down at Iowa Floor Covering. They can kind of describe it a little better than I can. 515-379-7000. Very special rate right now, folks. $269 per foot with self-installation. You can also visit their website, iowafloorcovering.com. They're located down in the metro down in Bondurant. So the Hawkeyes and the Wildcats on Saturday. David Braun brings his Wildcat team to Kinnick for the first time officially under the new Braun era. Of course, David Braun led Northwestern to an impressive finish last season in spite of the fact that they lost their head coach late in the process as they were prepping for the season with the whole hazing scandal. And this series had quite a storied history with Pat Fitzgerald and Kirk Ferentz, the two longest tenured coaches in this conference. And now you have a newbie versus the dean of college football, as they say. And this is a Northwestern team that, once again, started the season kind of slow, but they've performed at times better than one would anticipate. They won at Maryland in a blowout, took care of business against Brian Ferentz's Terrapins. And this is a Northwestern team that brings some swagger into Kinnick Stadium. This is a Northwestern team that is still in contention for a bowl spot. So what are the key stats, positions to watch for during this game? Well, of course, the conversation heading into this one, as always, as it seems to be with Iowa, is about the quarterback position. Is it time for Brenden Sullivan? If you missed Kirk Ferentz's press conference, I'm not going to review Tuesday's presser, but certainly I thought Kirk exerted somewhat of a different tone. Now, he did not back down from Cade being the starter. Look, I've been burned enough making bold predictions here of late, but I would not be shocked whatsoever to see Brenden Sullivan get some time. Now, he's not going to start, but don't be surprised if after the first quarter or earlier, if Cade is struggling against this Northwestern defense, and it's a decent Northwestern defense, not a great one, but if he is struggling, I would not be surprised if Sullivan ends up getting some time. Kirk made a point of saying during that presser, he said, hey, I'm comfortable with either guy. And when Brenden gets an expanded role, and then he corrected himself, he said, if Brenden gets an expanded role, yada, yada, yada. So I'm not saying it's a Freudian slip, but I do think that Brenden has a chance of playing this weekend against his former team. Remember, he and Jacob Gill have extra motivation for this one because they both transferred from Northwestern. Neither one of those guys were guaranteed starting roles, and that was reason for both those guys to transfer. Maybe both of those guys can lead Iowa to a win on Saturday. Let me give you some comparison numbers to look at between Jake Lausch and Cade McNamara. Cade's averaging 135 per game through the air, and that's less than Jack. Jack is averaging 162 passing yards per game. Neither number is impressive, but how about this? Jack Lausch, the worst passer rating in the conference and the lowest completion percentage through the air in the Big Ten at 51%. Those are Deacon Hill level Big Ten numbers, dead last in the Big Ten. Now, these two teams, these two quarterbacks are tied in one interesting stat, and that is passing yards per attempt. Down at the bottom of the conference, 5.9 yards per pass attempt for both of these players. So basically, it's just a matter of, hey, how many times is the offense calling on you to throw? Both these teams, both these quarterbacks, very comparable in spite of the fact that Cade McNamara is a senior, and Jack Lausch is a youngster playing in a somewhat new system at Northwestern. Now, Iowa, this is very interesting. These are a couple of stats to follow. Third down and fourth down completion percentages. Northwestern, abysmal in critical downs. They are dead last in the Big Ten in third down conversion percentage. They are the only team in the Big Ten offensively to be averaging under 300 total yards. So the worst total offense in the conference at this point. Now, they are decent in points per game, defensive points per game, defensive yards per game. Very comparable, actually, with where Iowa's at right now as a whole for this season. Iowa, of course, took a hit defensively last week, giving up almost 500 total yards to the Spartans. Northwestern might be able to compete and keep this thing low scoring. But man, I kind of feel like I did last week going into the Michigan State game. I couldn't imagine Michigan State going up and down the field. Now, here's where I was dead wrong on that. Michigan State actually has athletes, and it all happened to come together out of a bye week. I give Jonathan Smith a lot of credit. I can't see, and I've watched this team. You have a former Michigan wide receiver transfer who's now the star wide receiver at Northwestern, and A.J. Henning. But besides Henning, there's not a lot of athleticism at key skill position spots. So again, I know I sound like a broken record. I can't imagine Northwestern being able to total a bunch of yards against Iowa, but I was wrong a week ago. Different circumstances, but I certainly was wrong a week ago. How about this critical down stat? Iowa is the only team in the Big Ten Conference to have not converted a fourth down. The only team in the conference to have not converted a fourth down. Now, they also lead the conference in least amount of fourth down conversion attempts at 4, but they're 0 for 4 on fourth down. And you may say, well, Corey, that 0 means almost nothing because they've only tried it 4 times. Well, Penn State's tried it only 5 times. They are second to last in the conference for most number of fourth down conversion attempts. Penn State's converted 4 of those 5 attempts. So even though Iowa's improved drastically on third down this year, you can see the conservative ways of Kirk Ferentz with only 4 fourth down conversion attempts. They've had several 4th and 1s that they've turned down here during Big Ten Conference play. And again, when they have tried, 0 for 4 on fourth down. So the bottom line is, look, if Iowa can run the ball well at home, the homecoming crowd, they should be able to take care of business. It's not going to convince me or any other Hawkeye fans that Cade McNamara, he could go out there and throw for 200-plus yards. It's not going to convince me that he's the guy. I am ready to see Brenden Sullivan, and I've been hesitant to say bench Cade, play Sully. But at this point, the big goals are lost. So why not plan for the future? Kirk's not necessarily in that same frame of mind, I don't think, but I do think Kirk really, I know, not only from his press conference, but from some other words from somebody that talked to me here earlier this week, that Kirk, even behind closed doors, has really emphasized this week, we've got to start faster. You can't have a first half like Cade had last week. So that's why I think if we see a change, it's unlikely Kirk will wait till halftime to make that change. I think if Cade struggles early, he's going to see if he can get a spark out of Brenden Sullivan, and Sullivan, of course, being mobile, playing his former team. That would be a fascinating storyline, and it would give the fans something to get excited about. And we all know Hawkeye fans need that right now, sitting at 4-3. The Hawkeyes and Northwestern this Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Central Time on Big Ten Network. Tune in live following the game for Iowa postgame with Coach Don Patterson, and I will be publishing my score prediction early Saturday. We'll talk to you tomorrow.